frequencies of light: red, green, and blue.
Now, if that model's right, this would begin to explain the kinds of colour blindness that his friend John Dalton was exhibiting. Because if one set of receptors wasn't working properly, you wouldn't pick up that kind of colour. That was Young's idea.
Dalton, the man who'd begun the study of colour perception, provided bizarre posthumous confirmation of Young's idea. In 1995, 150 years after his death, doctors extracted DNA from Dalton's eyeball, which, amazingly, had been preserved by a Manchester Scientific Society. Dalton's DNA showed that he was blind to red and green. Back in the 19th century, understanding the mystery of how we see colour couldn't have come at a better time. Colour perception was now a matter of life and death. In 1875, in Sweden, near the town of Lagerlunda, a train missed a red signal and hurtled towards another in the middle of the night. 9 people died. Hundreds were injured. The cause of the accident was pinpointed to a colour-blind driver. In Britain, where there were more railway lines than anywhere else, the government lurched into action.
Experts from the scientific establishment were hired to do tests on whether there were good ways of spotting the colourblind amongst drivers and pilots.
The leader of the inquiry, Lord Rayleigh, immediately implemented a rigorous system of colour testing on the working classes. Building on Young's 3-colour theory, Rayleigh devised the first ever colour blindness tests for every train driver and boat pilot in the country. And by the early 1900s, the modern colour perception tests, which most people now take, were developed. But light itself remained enigmatic. Thomas Young's idea of light waves was accepted. But what were these waves made of? The answer would come from studying an aspect of light that is not at first obvious. The fact that light doesn't just show us the world, it changes it. As anyone who's had a rather bad sunburn will tell you, light doesn't leave the bodies it touches unaffected. On the contrary, light is a powerful chemical, physiological, and biological agent which can have the most huge effects on anything with which it interacts. The story of this discovery of the most miraculous of light's properties begins in the late 1700s in industrial England with one of the greatest English chemists, Joseph Priestley.
Joseph Priestley, a Yorkshireman of impeccable intellectual credentials, tough-minded, radical, materialist, and ambitious, was one of the leading natural philosophers of late 18th century Britain. And for Priestley and his closest friends, light and life went together. In this experiment, Priestley put a mouse into a sealed bell jar to test what happened to the air as the mouse breathed in and out. Fairly quickly, the mouse sickened, got exhausted, and died. This air, he reckoned, must be really bad not just for living animals, but for plants as well. So into the jar, Priestley introduced a set of growing plants, and he left them there for several weeks. To his amazement, they grew happily.
Whatever was in the air that killed the mouse seemed to make plants flourish.
And Priestley decided to test what it was in the air where the mouse had died that was responsible for encouraging the life of plants. He would simply introduce another mouse. The result was absolutely amazing. He found, provided that a plant was growing there, that the animal would suddenly revive. This was what he called the luxury air, which only a couple of mice and myself have had the privilege of breathing. And there was more. What Priestley found was that the quality of the air wasn't just improved by growing the plant in it. If you shone a light on the plant, the air quality went shooting up. What it showed was that light shining on the green matter in plants could restore the air to a almost paradisiac quality, where it would keep animals alive for unparalleled periods of time.